Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, and I hope you enjoy today. Wasn't it wonderful seeing the rain yesterday? And I hear we're getting more tomorrow. I can't believe I'm excited about rain, but what a difference it makes in our lives. First, for this event, I'd like to thank our sponsors, the province of Alberta, who's working in partnership with the government of Alberta to bring employment support services and programs to job seekers all around the province. I'd also like to thank Tribe. They are our technology provider and our support. They do all the magic behind the scenes, which makes this possible. And last, I do want to thank the fabulous talent pool team that made this event happen. They brought it together. And I say last, but really last, I want to thank you for attending today. And I hope that you will find that it's a valuable use of your time. So I wanted to share the process for today's event. We would encourage you to ask questions. The questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. You'll notice that there's a box on your screen that says type your question, and it's just as easy as that. We're unable to see you or hear you, so it's important that you use this box if you have a comment. And if you personally have any budgeting tools, tips, tricks, suggestions, apps that you might use, please share it in the box and we can share it with everyone else. We are once again going to have a gift card draw at the end of this event. We will be asking you a question and you will have heard the answer throughout the presentation. So type your question or your answer to the question into the poll that will come up near the end. And it gives you space for the answer, your name and your email, and we'll be reaching out by email to the winner. Good luck. Talent Pool has developed a very comprehensive list of mental health resources that's available to job seekers across the province for help. This list is a great resource for everyone, and you can find it in the question and answer link and on the Talent Pool webinar resource page, where it's available for you to download free of charge. These are trying times, and I think it's wonderful to have a list of support that's available to help us, our friends, our family through this very difficult period. I moved to Calgary in 1981. I was just a baby, but it was just in time to experience the first recession in 82. Where people were walking away from their homes due to the high interest rates and the layoffs that were taking place. Then I experienced again in 1986, 2009, 2015, and 2016, and again today. It doesn't get any easier, but what I've learned is that the only certainty in life is uncertainty. Being without work can feel scary and stressful. However, having a financial plan helps minimize the impact. Money mentors provide financial tips and resources for dealing with unemployment. Topics include budgeting, managing debt on a reduced income, and dealing with creditors. Today, we will learn tips and strategies to survive and thrive after being laid off. Our presenter today is Sheri, and she's been a credit counselor with Money Manners for 5 years. With a background in social work and coaching, I imagine Sheri's heard many stories from people with different situations, but all similar in nature, that she will be able to share with us today. Obviously, helping people is in her DNA, as she spent 2.5 years as an employment counselor working with immigrants in Fort McMurray, focusing on all of those employment things that we do as career coaches. I look forward to hearing your presentation, Sheri, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Just a couple of things I want to say before I get started on the actual presentation is I spend most of my day one-on-one with clients, listening to their stories, listening to their feelings, and helping them develop a plan. And layoff is certainly something that I speak to people about on almost a daily basis. So I certainly understand a lot of the financial and other concerns that you're experiencing. Just so you know as well, I'm what I consider to be a very good one-on-one counselor, but technology is not my area of expertise. So I'm hoping that everything goes well today. But please, if any of you at any point in time have any questions or need more help than what this presentation is able to discuss, don't ever hesitate to reach out to Money Mentors and schedule an appointment for a full in-depth assessment, because counselors like myself are available to help you one-on-one work through everything that we're going to be chatting about today. Okay, so what I'm going to do is screen share my presentation right now. Oops. And is it up? Excellent. All right. So in terms of financially surviving a layoff, oops, sorry. This is where the technology piece, there we go. What we're going to be covering today, we're very briefly going to be covering severance packages, okay? Briefly covering employment insurance, because I imagine many of you are very familiar already with that. I'm going to be spending quite a bit of time on budgeting and managing debt, because believe me, it is never too late to implement a budget. Whether you're anticipating a layoff, whether you're in the middle of a layoff, or whether you're kind of coming to the end of some benefits and you're concerned about things. So we're going to spend quite a bit of time on this, and I expect that I'll be sharing quite a bit of tips as well as personal stories that clients have shared with me through my experience. We're going to be talking about dealing with creditors, knowing how to handle creditors and knowing how they may be able to help you is very important. We're going to look at things to consider when dealing with creditors and what kind of strategies you can implement to help lower the cost of borrowing. So in terms of severance packages themselves, just please know the minimum compensation that is required, and make sure that the settlement amount complies with Alberta's employment standard for termination of employment, and that usually corresponds with the length of time that you had been employed and the type of employment that you had, such as full-time, part-time, management, that kind of stuff. Don't feel pressured ever to sign right away. If you are offered something, request to take the documents home to review it, and even be willing to consult a lawyer if you need to. Some employers pay a one-time severance amount or provide payments over a long period of time, and that's really important for financial planning as well. So things to look for are additional benefits, such as temporary health and dental coverage, how long it's going to last for, the option for you to take over your healthcare plan, pay your premiums yourself, or things like that. If you have a pension with your employer, find out what options are provided once you're no longer working. And those options can include keeping the money in the company's pension plan, transferring your pension to your new employer, transferring your pension into a locked-in RRSP. And you also may be tempted to take money out from your pension plan. Before you do that, I strongly recommend that you do some financial planning, because this can result in Canada revenue debt. And many people come to see me because of Canada revenue debt, and they weren't aware of repercussions of that before they looked at withdrawing from a pension or withdrawing from RRSPs as well, which is something that we're going to chat about a little bit more. and outplacement supports that can be offered. And I think Talent Pool is a wonderful example of that. In terms of employment insurance, I'm sure that many of you are familiar with this. There's 5 different types of EI benefits in Canada, from your regular benefits to sickness benefits to maternity or parental benefits, compassionate care, and self-employment benefits as well. And right now we've got the CRB benefits and all kinds of new stuff going on there. But in this presentation, we're going to be focusing strictly on EI regular benefits right now. So it's really important that you apply for EI right away, okay? You can apply for benefits even if you've not yet received your record of employment, and you do not want to delay filing your claim for more than 30 days after your last day of work, because you may lose your benefits if you do that. And absolutely, people have come to see me who did not apply in time and did lose benefits because of that. Apply for EI even with a severance package. Don't wait until your severance package is depleted to apply for benefits, because waiting more than 30 days again can result in loss of benefits. And your severance package will be evaluated by the Human Resource Skills and Development, and then you might be entitled to receive EI benefits after that if you're still employed. In terms of EI benefits, there is a maximum amount that you can qualify for. The basic rate for calculating that is 55% of your average insurable earnings to that maximum amount. All right. And remember, please, EI benefits are taxable. So it's very important to factor tax implications when you are planning your finances. I know out of desperation, sometimes people don't look at that. But again, Canada revenue debt is very stressful debt for people, and it's often what brings people in to see me. So really looking at that tax planning as well is an important consideration. Okay, so EI working while on a claim. So if you earn an income while receiving EI, you can now keep 50 cents of your benefits for every dollar that you earn, up to 90% of your previous weekly earnings. This is for part-time work only though. Prior to this, those receiving EI benefits would lower their benefit amount dollar for dollar. So this is a very welcome change for people. Now, those receiving EI benefits lower their benefits just 50 cents for every dollar they earned while working part-time. This also applies to employment, maternity, and sick leave benefits. Full-time employment does not qualify for this at all, regardless of the EI benefits being paid out, and even if that full-time employment has you making slightly less than what you would on EI. Okay. Budgeting after layoff. This is what I want to spend quite a bit of time discussing. And as well, I sent out ahead of time, and it's available as a resource to you, the Stretch Your Dollars Budgeting Basics Workbook. It is an absolutely fabulous workbook that I strongly encourage all of you to look at after this presentation. It has all of the resources in it, including spreadsheets for budgeting and different things that we're going to be talking about available to you. And it's an absolutely wonderful resource. So in terms of this, I can't stress again the importance of looking at this. And people come to see me if they anticipate they're going to be laid off, like I said, if they have been laid off. And so often people don't have any idea of what their life is truly costing them. So developing that budget is such an eye-opening experience for people. and allows you to plan. And I know it's a scary thing, but it becomes very empowering for people to see in black and white exactly why they are feeling like they're feeling, or it can give people a lot of hope about moving forward. I think part of resiliency, which I know Talent Pool is all about, is having a plan and knowing that you can make it through and that there are options available to you. And developing that budget is a way to do that. We often think of budgets as just punitive things, but they're not. I tell my clients, look at it as a design my life tool. And you get to put in it, I mean, you have to put in it, and we're going to go through in detail the important stuff, but you also get to put in it the stuff that's important to you. And if you have a plan that gives you hope and resiliency and options. So if you have a partner, it's really important to have an honest discussion with your partner about a potential layoff, okay, and to look at the budget. That way you can both brainstorm ways to cut back expenses and store up savings if possible. Believe me, I've had couples in my office where neither has discussed budgeting before, and I often find people have very different viewpoints about money as well. So it's not always an easy thing to do, but that budget is a wonderful tool for couples to look at together, at least, and come up with a plan. And it allows both to alter spending habits, knowing that you have a common goal to hopefully not increase your current debt load during any kind of a layoff. And it also allows you the opportunity to support each other both financially and emotionally in terms of planning during this difficult time. I often find with couples that one person has been responsible for a lot of the financial management, and it's a wonderful way to bring in the other person and to take some of that burden off of the person who's doing that management on their own as well. So how do you take stock of your financial situation? Okay, you do that by looking at a budget and a net worth statement. Okay, and again, both templates for doing all of that is in our Stretch Your Dollars Budgeting Basic booklet that I sent out. By doing that budget and net worth statement, it gives you a better picture of your overall financial situation, both in the short term and in the long term. Okay, and if you're looking at surviving a layoff, it helps you come up with cost-cutting measures to reduce the impact of that. We want you to focus on a lean budget as well. So when you do a budget, you can do one for kind of how you have been living your life, which is often how I start budgets with people. And then if clients are coming to me to look at debt options and we're coming up with debt repayment plans, we develop a lean budget. And I'll develop one right there with them in terms of areas that they are able to and willing to make reductions in. In terms of the net worth statement, and that is where you look at all of your assets versus all of your liabilities. And it serves as a great way to see your total cash reserves, including long-term investments that you might be able to access, or potential long-term planning, again, depending upon how long you're going to be laid off. So again, we want you to really react quickly and hope for the best, but plan for the worst. So in terms of income and expenses, lots of different income that people sometimes forget to include in the budget that I go through includes income from part-time work, partner's income as well. And it's interesting how often people aren't aware of their partner's income. because people have kept everything separate, which is perfectly fine. But when we're developing a spending plan for the entire family, and there is a layoff and a potential change to spending, it's important to look at that. Severance amounts as well, EI benefits, savings, and money from family and friends. So in terms of looking at essentials here, these are things that are really must-haves in your life, okay? We're going to be looking at food costs, and with that, again, we're going to be looking at groceries versus eating out, housing and utility costs, transportation costs. That is a massive one when I'm doing budgets with people, in terms of vehicles and expenses. And again, many people are not aware of the actual cost of that. So when I do budgets with people, we look at the total cost of everything. So with the vehicle, everything from license and registration to maintenance and repair, as well as gasoline and insurance and potential vehicle payments. And our budgets, you'll see, and again, it's in the Stretch Your Dollars budgeting book, allows you to look at all of that. Because there's a lot of what we call yearly or irregular and annual costs that come up with vehicles. In terms of clothing, definitely there's sometimes work clothing expenses. And clothing is one area that can usually be reduced quite a bit if you're looking at a layoff. Okay, and then there's the non-essential expenses, and other discretionary spending, such as you're eating out, looking at subscription memberships. Again, often people aren't aware until they're in my office and we start adding up all of their subscriptions, what they're spending for Netflix and Spotify and Disney and cable. And I've had lots of people that have a lot of stuff that they forget about or that they're paying for and they never use. Their Amazon Prime and all kinds of different stuff. So having a really detailed budget and looking at all of that stuff that you haven't thought about before, but is now on your radar, is really important if you're facing a layoff, to look at that. Gifts and vacations as well. So in terms of cutting costs, develop your spending plan and budget. First thing to do, okay? And reduce non-essential expenses. Those are the wants. That's some of the stuff that we chatted about already, from your full cable package to, you know, quite often now I don't even put cable into budgets and people are just using the internet. Eating out at restaurants and ordering food. I've had lots of people who say, oh, I don't do much, and they'll give me an amount for their monthly budget, and I find that thinking about it more in terms of a weekly amount and being honest with yourself about that is really important. So people will give me a monthly amount, but when I ask them, okay, this is about this much in a week, it's very common that they go, no, it's a little bit more than that. And especially when I indicate, okay, what are you spending on coffee or tea? I've had people pull up their Starbucks app and be shocked at the amount of money that is going into that. So again, I'll do the budget for what they have been spending, and that's an area then that you can look at for how can you reduce that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to put it to zero. For some people they do, because their budget is that tight temporarily, depending upon their situation. For other people, it's important to still build a bit of life into that lean budget. If you make it so that you have nothing to enjoy in life, or the occasional treat, you're not going to likely be successful. So if you can, build in a little bit of stuff again that's important to you. Design your life. We definitely recommend that you, again, try to reduce that eating out at restaurants and ordering in food. And again, if you're not sure about a typical monthly amount, look at a weekly amount and be really honest. Go back through your bank statements and take a look at what you have been spending. And sometimes as well, this requires adjusting what you're spending on groceries, because you might have been spending a lot on eating out and less on groceries, but this is an opportunity for you to address that, and you might need to address your grocery budget as well. In terms of cutting back on essential expenses, right? There are things that cannot be eliminated from your budget entirely, but their costs can be reduced. Groceries, again, like I was just chatting about, that accounts for a large part of a household budget, especially if you have kids and especially if you have teenagers. I know from experience that when I was feeding an extra teenage boy who came to live with us, my grocery budget went up by about $400 a month. So it's a big consideration. You know, and there's ways to try to look at reducing that in terms of where you shop, how often you shop, switching to no-name kind of food and substitutions like that. A big part of that is also meal planning to minimize a lot of wastage of food that goes on. Oops. Sorry, I hit that a little bit too early. A few other areas I want to talk about again in terms of cutting back on essentials also include transportation. And again, looking at your vehicle and the real cost of your vehicle. And if you can afford to keep driving it if you are laid off. And looking at your insurance as well, and maybe increasing your insurance deductible, or if you can't afford that vehicle, are you able to park it? Are you able to sell it if need be? Do you have equity in it? What are the consequences around that vehicle? In terms of housing and utilities, you know, trying to, again, reduce some of those costs, especially for cable and other stuff. You know, I've even had clients who've had to look at renting out a room in their home or giving themselves a timeline to find employment again. And if they're not going to, they're going to look at, are they able to move and potentially live with a roommate or something like that to reduce those housing costs. In terms of clothing, please avoid buying new clothing unless you absolutely have to. And cell phones. That's a massive expense for people, and especially for families nowadays. And there are certainly ways to reduce that by contacting your provider about reducing cost of your monthly plan, which your kids especially might not like, but it's really important to do that. And sometimes people will switch to less expensive cell providers as well. Okay. So in terms of tracking your spending, once you have developed that budget, it is only working if you actually follow it and track what you're spending. Otherwise, it's just a piece of paper that sits on your fridge that probably causes you more stress, like that piece of exercise equipment that is covered in clothing or something that you never use. Having a budget is the first step because it's a plan, but living that plan is critical, and that involves tracking your spending. And we're going to focus a little bit on that in the upcoming slides. So options to track your spending. Payment cycle. Okay, things to consider, especially if you're going to be on EI when you are paid bi-weekly and your payment cycle is not set up that way. We have a fabulous resource called Paycheck Planner. And it's, again, in that Stretch Your Dollars Budgeting Basics. And we can chat about that at the end of, after questions and everything, if people have questions. But it actually allows you to plan when you're going to pay your bills according to each payment date that you have. So if you're paid bi-weekly, the paycheck planner allows you to develop a budget and then plan when you're going to pay each of those bills. Payment amount, taxes and penalties on withdrawal as well. We chatted a little bit about that as far as our RRSPs go and stuff like that. Oops. Managing debt while laid off. Sorry, this is going a little bit. What is going on here? Of course, the technology giving me a little bit, going a little bit faster than I am here, not quite matching what I've got. Sorry about that, everyone. Loss of contribution room. We chatted about that already. If you're going to look at RRSPs and withdrawing those, please remember, besides the tax implications, that you cannot put money back into those RRSPs again. Versus if you withdraw from a tax-free savings account that you've had, you can replenish that. I'm going to go back and talk about one thing, and I apologize. This is what messed me up. The slide didn't either come up or I hit it twice. I talked about cutting costs, and I want to go back and chat about that a little bit more in terms of how you can look at doing that and tracking expenses, because that's what didn't come up for me that threw me off back there. In terms of tracking your expenses, and this is a very common question that I am asked, how can you do that? So if you develop a really good budget, and the ones that we do with clients at Money Mentors actually come with tracking sheets attached to them, which is a wonderful thing. It does all of the math for you. Otherwise, I recommend that you use paper and pen to track, or a lot of really good financial apps. Financial apps through your bank allow you real-time approach to tracking the spending, and they're ideal for people that love technology, which clearly is not me. And they also provide information on your spending history. A lot of people ask me questions such as, Sheri, should I do like the envelope system or the jar system? That works best for people that are comfortable carrying cash, which a lot of us aren't nowadays, especially with COVID. For a lot of variable expenses though, like for example, if you've allowed yourself a certain amount of money for eating out, and that's an area that you know you're particularly prone to overspending in, what I recommend to clients is you give yourself every 2 weeks that amount, for example, that you're allowed to have in your budget, and you carry that in cash. And when it's gone, there is no more for that. Some clients, we recommend actually that if they have a certain place they'd like to go and they're addicted to their Tim Hortons every day, or a particular restaurant they like to go to, that if you've got a certain amount in your budget for that, at the start of the month, you purchase a card for that amount of money. And then again, you only use what is on that card. And when it's gone, there isn't any more of that kind of spending. So that works really well for things like groceries, even as well for people. And be tempted, those of us who like to shop at Costco or Walmart or places like that, there's a lot of other stuff there besides groceries that we often spend our money on. And we have to do some planning around that if we're doing that, because we don't want to be buying clothing that we could be cutting and putting it into our grocery budget. So it's something to look at. I have one client who said what they do to plan for Christmas, for example, every time that they go grocery shopping is they buy an extra $20 or $25 gift card with their groceries, and they build that right into their grocery budget. And then when Christmas or birthdays or special occasions come up, they have that covered as well. So the big part of tracking is really being aware of where your money is going. And are those decisions that you are making in terms of your spending contributing or contaminating to your vision that you have for yourself within your budget? Okay, so now using debt during a layoff. So I'm so sorry, I've done this presentation before, but I never missed that, and it kind of threw me off there. Sometimes even with our best efforts, we still need to incur debt during a layoff. So some things that we need to consider before using debt to finance a layoff are interest rates. We really want to avoid high interest rate debt. And although the slide here in front of me, it says, look at credit cards, department store cards, and payday loans. Payday loans in particular are such a brutal hole to get out of. And I know that they seem like such a wonderful emergency thing for people, but please, if you can stay away from payday type of loans or lenders like that at really high interest rates, you will be much further ahead, because it's often those debts that lead people, even once they find work again, to not be able to reduce that debt at all because of those interest rates. And people end up having to come and see me and having to be forced to looking at legislated debt options to get out of that. It is a consideration to use low-cost debt to pay down your high-cost debt. So for example, looking at a consolidation loan to reduce credit card debt and things like that, to help lower that monthly minimum payment you make. There's certainly considerations around that, because if you are unemployed, it's going to be difficult for you to always get a consolidation loan because they want to see proof of income. So it's a good thing to look at planning ahead for that if you think you are going to be unemployed. All right. Again, using low-cost debt to pay down high debt cost is not a really effective long-term strategy, but in the short term, it can absolutely help you. We want to make sure that you are making your minimum payments on your debt monthly. Okay, that is absolutely critical, because making your minimum debt payments on time every month affects your credit score significantly. It accounts for about 35% of your credit score. So each of your debts reports every month to the credit bureau, and they report if you're making that payment on time. And if you start to get behind on making just that minimum payment, it changes your credit rating for each of those debts, which in turn reflects and lowers your credit score. Credit utilization and total debt load. So credit utilization is the amount of debt that you have owing on each credit product compared to the credit limit on that credit product. So for example, if you have a credit card with a $10,000 limit and you have $5,000 on that credit card, you're at 50% of your credit utilization. That's another really important factor as far as your credit score goes. Because the higher your credit utilization, the lower your credit score. So you can have two people with the exact same amount of debt, both making minimum payments on time every month, but if one person is using 90% of their available credit and the other person is using 50% of their available credit, the person using less of their available credit will have a better credit score. Because credit utilization, again, accounts for about 35% of how your credit score is calculated. So making minimum payments on time and trying to keep your credit utilization lower is really important to your credit score. Okay. Secured debt. So secured debt is any debt that has an asset that is a claim to the debt in the event the debt is not paid. So for example, a mortgage is secured by your house. A car loan is secured by your vehicle. Sometimes people go take title loans against their car nowadays, again at some really high interest places, and that is secured by that vehicle. And if the person is unable to make payments on the debt, that asset may be taken to settle the debt. So again, out of desperation, people might go take that high interest car loan and use their vehicle as security. And then they will come to see me saying, okay, I can't afford these ridiculous payments. What can I do to lower that payment? And if it is a secured debt, there are not options available to lower that payment. There isn't support through credit counseling or through the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act to lower secure debt payments and allow people to keep those assets. So if you're considering using debt because you are laid off, please be very much aware of the implications of that if you're going to do that. Don't rush to pay off debt. I know this sounds strange, especially if you've received a severance package or something like that, because our initial reaction might be to use this money to pay off your debts. Rather, what we recommend you do is you develop that budget, you develop that lean budget, and you put your extra money into an account to cover expenses based on that lean budget and to have some emergency savings. Your objective needs to be to make the minimum payments on all of your debts so that you can maintain that good credit score, to avoid adding to existing debt, and to really follow that lean budget and have that plan if you can. Even for clients who end up using our debt repayment program, they often say to me at the start, Sheri, if I get extra money, should I put extra, I'm going to put extra on my debt repayment right away. And I always tell them, as long as you're making the monthly payment that's required, please build up some emergency savings. And then once you have that, then if you want to start putting extra on your debt, do that. But rushing to pay off debt when you are laid off or you're concerned that you're going to be laid off is not something that we recommend that you do. Dealing with creditors. Something that scares a lot of people. They've never had to deal with creditors before, other than when they were happily applying for or receiving credit. It's a very different story to go chat with your creditors when you're in a situation where you're concerned. But surprisingly, it can be very, very effective. So it's really important for you to be proactive when you're dealing with your creditors. Check to see if you have loss of employment insurance against any of your credit products. A lot of people forget that they have this. And unless they actually phone their creditors and ask, or eventually they phone their creditors to say, oh, I've been laid off, I can't manage this anymore, and then they find out that they had insurance. And again, you have to apply for that within a certain time frame of being laid off. So take a look at all of your credit products that you have and see if you do have that insurance on it. Believe me, you have paid lots of money for that insurance if you do have it. So always go back and check to see if you do. Also, contact your financial institution and ask about options they might have for managing debt on a reduced income. Especially because of COVID, creditors, have learned to be much more adaptable for people, and they've been offering quite a bit of solutions for people. Different banks have different programs for people in that kind of a situation. They're not effective long-term solutions, but they are effective in the short term. And hopefully your layoff and reduced income is just going to be short term. Please do not wait for creditors to contact you for a payment or allow your accounts to go to collections. Not only is that incredibly stressful for people, at that point in time, the creditors might be less likely to offer you any kind of a solution than if you were proactive at the very start. Have credit available before you need it. Most credit applications require proof of employment and income. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're going to look at a consolidation loan or something like that to deal with high interest credit card debt, the ideal time to apply for that is when you are employed and don't necessarily need the credit. The critical thing if you're going to do that is that if you do that, fabulous, it reduces your payments. Please do not go incur further credit card debt. A very common reason for people to come and see me is because they did a consolidation loan, usually 18 to 24 months before they're sitting in my office with me, and then they did not adjust their spending. They did not develop that spending plan and develop or follow a lean budget and track their spending. So they took a consolidation loan, they're making payments on that, but they use their credit cards again. And now they have a consolidation loan payment and they have credit card payments. And now their lenders are saying to them, sorry, that debt service ratio is too high. You have too much debt for income, and we're not able to offer you any kind of lower credit options, so you need to go see money mentors. So please, again, if you're going to ever look at that, please have that budget and have a plan. Know what you can afford. So how do you decide whether or not you can take on more debt? Again, you need to have that budget and that lean budget, because creditors will often pre-approve you for more credit than you can afford to make monthly payments on. And being approved for something is not the same as being able to afford it. Those are two very different things. So again, if you have that budget and you know quite comfortably that you can afford it, wonderful. If you're not sure, run a budget and make sure, because obtaining more credit that you can afford can absolutely lead to financial stress and potentially collection calls and a lot of stuff that people want to avoid. So we do have a course as well called Credit and Lending 101. It's free and it's online at the Money Mentor site, so it can help people do that as well. Lower monthly debt payments. So how can you do that? With a reduced income, you want to find ways to reduce your monthly minimum payments. And we already chatted about contacting your creditors and being proactive, but sometimes there's a little bit more that needs to happen. You can also inquire with your creditors about a no-frills credit card, kind of like essentials versus non-essentials and wants versus needs. We do pay more for those credit cards that give us all those points that we love and everything, but sometimes you can have a less expensive no-frills credit card. And again, the best time to apply for this is usually when you are still employed if possible. And the Government of Canada has a great credit card selector tool as well. If you ever wanted to look at that, you could do a Google search and find that. Consolidation Loan. Whoops. Sorry, hit too fast again. Consolidation Loan. Again, we've chatted about that already. And again, the biggest thing is to develop a plan not to take on more debt when you're doing that. Understand the implications of pledging that security or collateral when you do that, because many people don't understand that, and it's not always explained really well by the lenders. In terms of refinancing, I keep on going one step ahead here. Refinancing is when you go back and you try to extend the term of your loan. It's got a lot of advantages to it in terms of you can use the money to balance your budget or to pay down other debt. For example, you might take out or speak with your vehicle lender and refinance for a longer period of time. I find that this works well for people who are closer to paying their vehicle off in full, but aren't going to be able to manage that payment during the time of the layoff, so they can go and extend that. Again, if you choose to stretch out this repayment, make sure that you remember the purpose is not to lower your payment so that you can take on any more debt. The purpose is to refinance so that you can live that lean budget. Because you can end up paying more interest over time when you do that. But certainly a lot of people have been refinancing their mortgages over the past while because mortgage rates are so low. Before you do that, again, always check into if there's going to be any fees with that for early refinancing. But that has been something that many of our clients have been doing, especially during this time and when mortgage rates are so low. Orderly payment of debt. So let's say that you have done everything that you can do in terms of your budget, and you are in a position where there are not enough cuts that you can make to manage on your own. You have done a potential consolidation loan, you have refinanced your vehicle, you are living a lean budget, but making minimum payments on time every month is still not an option for you, and you have worked with your creditors. There are legislated debt repayment options that are available to you, and the orderly payment of debts option is one of those options. It's an option that we administer, and it allows people to pay back unsecured debt. So again, that's the debt like credit cards, loans, lines of credit that are not attached to any kind of security or asset, because again, you can't change those secured debts. But it allows you to take your unsecured debts, consolidate them into one monthly payment, and pay back those debts at a 5% interest rate over a maximum 5-year time period. And it can include government debt as well. So again, if you have cashed in RSPs or something like that, and you end up with government debt, working with CRA yourself is always the best and first option. But if it's not working for you and you are looking at them potentially at some point, if you have found work again garnishing or doing something, orderly payment of debt is an option, even for people that are collecting EI, absolutely, to look at for debt repayment. It does significantly affect people's credit rating and credit score. And they are not allowed any unsecured credit while they're on the program. So my job as a counselor, when people come to me and we're looking at how do I deal with this, how do I manage, I always start by looking at their budget. And then I go through and look at a lean budget. And then I'm also looking at and exploring all those different other options that we chatted about for them managing on their own, kind of as a first consideration. And sometimes I will be able to come up with a plan for people to do that. And if they're unemployed, again, the focus is on, can you manage that minimum debt repayment while you're looking for that job? Because we want to get you through that point, right? And then we can reevaluate once you are employed, trying to reduce that debt. But if people have done all of that and they're absolutely desperate because they don't have any of those options available to them anymore, and they're not able to manage those minimum payments on their own, and they're potentially facing some legal action or the constant stress of collectors and creditors, we do an assessment to look at orderly payment of debt as well. And it can end those collection calls and garnishes and absolutely a lot of lower stress. And for many people, it allows them to see their debt actually going down every month. And then when they do find work again and income changes, then we work with clients on revamping that budget. So it doesn't necessarily need to be that lean budget anymore. It can be a different budget with different options and trying to get that debt further reduced faster. A consumer proposal is an option administered by a trustee that's also a legislative debt repayment option. And it's a debt settlement. So instead of paying back 100% of the debt that clients do with the orderly payment of debt program, consumer proposal has clients just paying back a portion of debt, which sounds fabulous, and everybody goes, okay, why wouldn't I do that? Because there are a lot of rules that come with that in relation to assets and in relation to income. So as part of our assessment with clients and going through and doing that budget, just like when I recommended you do your net worth statement, you're looking at assets and liabilities. We do the same thing, and we're familiar with what those rules are. And there are absolutely instances where I recommend to clients that they go talk to an insolvency trustee about a consumer proposal. And again, it's an option that does significantly affect credit, and you're not allowed credit. And consumer proposals can go for as long as 5 years or less. And then, of course, there's bankruptcy, which many people have heard about and want to avoid. Again, it's done through a licensed insolvency trustee, and there are very specific rules around income and assets, and proof of income has to be provided every month. The Bankruptcy Act sets a certain income level for size of the family, and that is just set. Then there's considerations such as child care and medical costs that go into that. So the job of an insolvency trustee is to say, okay, this is what you will pay back through bankruptcy. Because that's not based upon the amount of debt that you have, it's actually based upon the amount of income you have and assets that you have. So when clients come see me and I'm doing my assessment, we always kind of start with being proactive and managing on your own and looking at that and assessing all the way through bankruptcy. And by the end of our assessment appointment, we usually know kind of which option is going to be best for clients. And I sometimes have to recommend to people that they do look at bankruptcy. Or often people will phone me and say, I think I just have to go bankrupt. And I gather information and let them know that that is not an option for them. It's not a good option for them. So again, we look at everything, and we always try to support people if they can to manage on their own. What? I don't know, this is strange. Sorry, we've chatted about this, and this is not me, this is our presentation. Moving forward is what was supposed to be next. So I'm not crazy like I thought, I'm just hitting the arrows and it's going to different things. Consumer proposals, we've covered that. Bankruptcy. Moving forward. Implement an emergency fund. Can't stress the importance of that again. As soon as, and it can start as small as it can be within your budget, but it's so important to do that and to get into the habit of doing that. And I build that into all budgets of people, even people that are using our orderly payment of debt program, even people that have to look at filing for bankruptcy. Learn from past spending mistakes. I don't necessarily like that word mistake. You know, a lot of people use it with me, and that's fine if they take that perspective. We often, in our society today, we haven't been made aware of how we're spending. And it's only when sometimes we're forced into that awareness that we can look and go, oh, I want to make some changes. I want to do things differently. And we have to kind of forgive ourselves and let go of what we consider mistakes. And the way to do that is to develop a budget, a lean budget, and a plan moving forward. Live on less, save the rest. It's hard to do when we look out our windows and we see everybody around us and we think that that is what it is like. But believe me, a lot of what is out there is not real. It's based on credit. And when clients finish a debt repayment program, such as orderly payment of debt, and it might take them 5 years, and sometimes they're paying back significant amount of money. We do exit interviews, and everybody tells me that they have a whole new perspective on money. And those are the people that I know are going to be successful moving forward financially, because it's a change that happens in your mind. Sometimes you're forced into it because of a layoff, okay? But sometimes people tell me, and most of the time they tell me how much lighter they feel and a different perspective they have. They've been forced to look at wants versus needs. They've recognized that they're not any less happy, you know, especially once they found work again, but they have a new way of looking at their life. Most people have that emergency savings and savings again, and not having credit is so important. And they're always telling me how they want to tell their friends, you know, they see their friends doing all the same stuff that they used to do and really not being aware. And they're trying to guide them into, please develop a budget, look at your situation, have a plan, live on less, kind of decide for yourself what is enough. Again, use a budget and track your spending. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be like starting a new healthy eating plan or starting a new exercise routine. So at first, it's not going to be easy and it's going to be work. But then it doesn't seem like nearly as much work once you're going through. And it is so empowering for people. I see that all the time. And I believe that it's such a big part of being resilient, is knowing that we have choices to make and viewing our budget as choices, okay, and not something punitive. So be proactive, be quick to adjust and modify expectations. So in conclusion, how to financially survive a layoff? Apply for benefits right away. React quickly, okay? Develop your lean budget, cut your costs. Create your lean spending plan, as I've said numerous times. Develop your net worth statement. You might be pleasantly surprised, or it might be a really big eye-opening exercise for you. Be proactive when dealing with your creditors, all right? In terms of resources, Money Mentors is here to help you. If you look at all of the information I've sent out and you go, it's just too much, it's too daunting, I can't do a budget, I'm really stressed, phone and book an appointment. It's free. It's what we do with clients every day. And within 1 hour, we will have a budget for you and usually a plan. Our website has wonderful resources on it. We've got a lot of free courses, from credit rating and credit score to a budget bootcamp course to the credit and lending course. And I've already sent out the Stretch Your Dollars Budgeting Basics. Alberta Works is there as well sometimes for people if your employment insurance ends and you are still unemployed, right, through Human Services. Service Canada, Alberta Labor. Okay. Oh, and this actually we can skip. Sorry about that. We don't have that anymore. It was part of our presentations, but it's no longer there. So that is the slide presentation, and my apologies for some of the slide goof ups. Like I said, I'm great at the financial counseling and working one-on-one with people. Sometimes the slide stuff is not my best, but if anybody has any questions, now's the time to ask. We still have a few minutes.
Excellent. And I do have a few questions here. So, no apology needed. Oh my goodness, we've all had tech little hiccups. I know I've certainly had a few over the time. So the first question that I had is, a person asked whether they can have their credit card canceled and then receive a reduced monthly payment. So can they go to the credit card company and say, I don't want this credit card anymore. I owe $600, but I can only pay you X number of dollars a month? Is that an option?
Yes, that is absolutely an option, but I'm gonna, like I said before then, if you cancel that card, okay, voluntarily yourself, when people do this, you are lowering your available credit and you're actually impacting your credit score negatively. Oh. So if you can instead, yes, and lots of people have said they've done that. They'll work on reducing debt, which is great, and they'll cancel that card, and then their credit score goes down. That's where that credit utilization comes in, because they still have debt, right? But they don't have any available credit as they get that paid down. So instead, I recommend what you do is you do approach them and say, this is what I can afford right now as a monthly payment. Can you please help me out with that? And go on that monthly payment, but keep that credit card open if you can, okay? Because okay, it's actually helping your credit score if you do that. Yes.
Thank you. Sheri, do you mind stop your screen sharing?
I was just about to do that, sorry.
Excellent. So we can see your face. Yay.
Oh, okay. It's like I'm so embarrassed about my mix-ups with the,
no need. Now, really, no need. I bet every single person here has had some little flub while they've been using technology. So we all understand. So thank you. That's a really good point, because you did go over your credit score and how that all affects it. You know, years ago, I was a manager of customer service with one of the big 5 banks in a previous life. And what I found so interesting and what I observed is people will share personal information about themselves. They'll talk about difficulties they're having in their marriage or their children. They'll talk about, you know, even their sex life. And the funny thing is, people are really reluctant to talk about money. And I think there's a little bit of fear and shame attached to that. Spending and finances are such an emotional subject. And so I'm curious, we've got a couple of questions here asking, what kind of approaches do you suggest that we address with our family, or help us figure out how do we approach this situation? You know, is it best to come out and say it? Is it, what advice do you have?
Again, there's different approaches to take. I think the most important piece is that it needs to somehow be out in the open. And depending upon where things are at with your family dynamics, it's important for us to understand our own money personalities and how we are triggered by money. and the feelings that it arises in us. And that could be very different from our spouse's money personality. So I think part of that is being aware of triggers, setting ourselves up for success, just like any difficult discussion. We want to set that up at a time and a place and in a way that works. So really think about what has been effective with your partner or your family before when you had to have discussions or make decisions, and try to set it up that way. For some people, it's really important to have the information ahead of time. So they will have me do a budget with them. And especially when I will pick up on things that there's differences with a partner or a lack of information or a lot of conflict that will often come up during our time kind of together. Take the time to then sit down and go through that spending plan with the partner as well. Because that is such an eye-opening experience for people. I see that on a daily basis. And many people will go, oh, that explains so much. Or with couples, that's the first time I was aware of this, or I didn't recognize that. It's really important that during that discussion, I don't think there can be blame, right? And if we know that we're going to be triggered and do that, we need to prepare ourselves for that kind of a discussion, because the purpose of that discussion is to try to come up with a plan for moving forward. So I don't know if there's any one specific way, because we're all different, but please take all of that into account. Other than if you do have an actual spending plan, and ours, when we do it with clients, lists out all of the debts and the payments and the situation. It's also in black and white, right, in front of the person.
So you're talking about facts rather than facts.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if we understand people's money personalities, and there's stuff on our website about money personalities as well, if people want to look at that. And I've been married 32 years. Believe me, my husband and I have very different money personalities. So we have to respect those differences and find ways that work for us. Absolutely. Just like we do about any other kind of discussion.
Right.
Where we have those differences come into play.
I got you there. Okay. So another question. What do you suggest if someone has several lines of credit of debt and a Visa debt, and they have recovery benefits, but that is ending and no job offer coming? The minimum payment every month is $400. So using one to pay the other, we're asking for a friend.
Got it.
You
so
see
what that person's doing? This is what I see every day. So what's happening right now is that person is juggling debt, right? Using one to pay the other. Not recommended, but you're right. When there's just recovery benefits, again, it's looking at that budget, but also there has to be a timeline for how long that can last for. So it's not recommended at all. Sometimes people have to do that. And sometimes I've had to tell clients, you're going to have to continue juggling, especially if you think things could change very quickly. If you're going to get back to work, right? What does your income usually look like? What type of work are you looking at doing? What's going to happen though, and people have to prepare themselves for this, and this is why a timeline is so important and having a plan, is when you juggle debt like that, that debt slowly increases every month. And eventually it's maximized. And then that person isn't able to make those minimum payments anymore. They're not going to qualify to have the debt increased. And so that juggling is not going to work long term. It's not decreasing, it's increasing debt, but it is going to have a time limit on it. And if that person then, right, is still unemployed and debts have maxed out, it becomes really difficult for them. That's when they need to sometimes look at the orderly payment of debt program or talking to an insolvency trustee. So that's when they need to reach out, I think, and do a really good assessment. Or even before they get maximized, so they can have a time frame on this as well. I really recommend they do that, because I've sat with people sometimes and I've said, okay, you've got maybe 3 to 4 more months of being able to do this. And then, depending upon what your income is, because we develop the budget, it shows what payment ability is left. Then I'm like, this is how much you have left for payment. So is that going to fit for you to manage on your own with the creditors? Maybe you need to work with the creditors. Maybe you need to wait for, income to go up again, or maybe you need to seek help through the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act. But if you do that, you're not allowed credit. So you need to be in a position where you can meet your basic needs in life, that lean budget, without credit.
Okay.
I hope that answers.
So this, yeah, I think it did. And I think this person should tell their friend that they need to get in touch with you as step one. And maybe they should also go to one of the service agencies in Calgary, Edmonton, across the province that helps people with their job search. And, perhaps then they will have a chance to find work more easily, or maybe even transitional work until they find work in their field. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. So do you help with financial planning during this current situation who are out of work? Yes. So that's
Absolutely.
what you're talking about. You just phoned that number, and I saw there was the email was quite easy. It's CRS? No, never mind. Not quite easy.
So,
there was an email.
Our phone number is a toll-free number. It's 1-888-294-0076. You phone that number and they will schedule you an appointment with a credit counselor. I'm one of many credit counselors, and yeah, we are very client focused and giving information. We're not here to sell you a product. My income isn't dependent on me selling you our debt repayment program. We're here to give you the best financial information we can. We serve Albertans for free and do all kinds of stuff.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what are the consequences of withdrawing all of your money out of an RSP?
So, like I said, there can be tax implications. So you really need to do planning, because money will be taken off for taxes at the time that it is withdrawn. But what happens is people don't calculate how that adds to their yearly income. So when they go file their taxes the following year, sometimes it's put them up into the next tax bracket. And their deductions for their income that they've had throughout the year, and their deductions as well for when they did RSP withdrawal, might be at a lower amount. So by having more income, and it's actually put you into higher tax bracket, and people can often end up owing money to the government because of withdrawing our RSPs. So that's one big factor. So please really do tax planning ahead of time and make sure that you address that if you can, and be aware of that. The other implication is you cannot put back into that RRSP.
Right.
So it's not like you're, right? There's only a couple of programs for first-time home buyers and stuff that you can. So if you withdraw and you need it for spending, you can't put it back in. So you've lost that contribution room for the rest of your life for that particular amount of RRSP. The other factor to consider is that our RSPs within the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act are actually safe, except for contributions made within the past year. So clients come to me that withdrew all their RSPs to try to survive, still ended up having to file for bankruptcy or something if it was really bad. And it's such a shame because those RSPs were safe as long as they were not contributions made within the past year. So kind of, again, having a plan and having a timeline. I always say to people, give yourself a timeline for this, and knowing what your options are is so important.
Okay, so someone's asking, how much should you put in an emergency fund, and is a TFSA considered emergency fund?
Absolutely, it can be considered an emergency fund. you have to treat it like that, though. And I have lots of people, again, that tell me, oh, I put into a TFSA as we're doing their budgets, but I withdraw every month. That is not an emergency fund. An emergency fund is for your basic life expenses to be covered. It is not to be touched unless there's an absolute emergency, right? Like a vehicle repair, your vehicle is not going to work and you need that vehicle repaired right now for your job search or something like that. So in terms of how much to put in, again, that's going to depend upon your budget. So ideally, we want to have quite a few months of living expenses available to us if we can. So if you are in a position where you are working and you have that emergency, you know, a few months worth of living expenses, I'd say if you can have 6 months, fabulous. But if you can't, then you can't. If you only have a little bit available for an emergency fund, then still do that. And you need to treat that, please people, treat it like a bill. If you don't treat it like a bill, then it won't happen. It's called lifestyle inflation. So once your situation changes again and you have found work, we tend to spend what we earn. So if we don't treat that emergency fund like a bill, then it just won't happen. If we say, oh, I'm going to wait to see what's left over at the end of the month, it's just not going to happen. So treat it like a bill, put it in something, and it could be a tax-free savings, absolutely.
Okay. Another question is, if someone's not of retirement age, so not over, say, 65, can they use a locked-in retirement account to pay debt?
People have done that, absolutely. There are rules, again, about withdrawing from a locked-in retirement account. You usually have to show that it's needed, kind of that there's no other option available to you. There's a lot of rules around withdrawing from LIRAs. So that is going to depend upon how it was all set up as well. So it's not an easy, quick process usually to do. Again, before you look at doing that, people, please, if you're going to do that and pay off debt, do you have to do that? Because I mean, it's just how I feel sometimes. For me, I see lots of seniors as well. A lot of people are not set up for retirement, and doing that might really jeopardize your future, whereas that might be protected and you might have different options available for the time being right now. So before you do that, I recommend you do a consult before you look at doing that.
And that totally makes sense, because you've told us that, you know, RSP money is protected, and so why would you do that? Thank you. What's the difference between a budget and a lean budget?
So, I mean, I guess it's terminology. The idea of a lean budget is it's your very basic budget where you're living lean. You've cut out a lot of stuff, right? You've reduced it to just look at kind of your basic costs, versus a budget, which we call a spending plan also. If you're working, it's got more built into it. That's when you've got a little bit more maybe for eating out. You're saving for travel. You're saving for those other goals. So a lean budget is a very basic, what do I make, right? Or what do I spend when my income is lower, right? How do I live lean when my income is lower?
Right, okay. Now, I'm not sure if you can, if someone moves to the US and can they still apply payment of orderly debt?
Oh,
sorry.
If they're on the orderly payment of debt program and they move to the US? Yes.
If they move to the yes. Okay.
As long as you are a resident of Alberta at the time that you start the orderly payment of debt program, you can move anywhere in the world. And I've had clients who did the affidavit, because it's all done through legal documents, did the affidavit when they were in Alberta, knowing, for example, they were going overseas to teach. And that's fine. Then they can, as long as they make their monthly payment still, right, through the program, not an issue at all. Yes, they can move, but you have to be a resident of Alberta at the time to start it.
Thank you. Excellent. And then the last one is, I wonder if there's a limit on how long, I don't know if you understand this, it takes to process to reactivate a previous EI claim? EI claim. Do you know anything about EI?
Yeah. No, no,
No,
sorry,
okay.
that's not my
Yeah,
area.
yeah, yeah. Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sheri. I've learned a lot from listening to you share information, and it's been really valuable. And so, actually, I need to have a conversation with my husband too. And we've been married 38 years, so yeah, we still fight over, who throws away the end of the toothpaste. So you never know. But I just want to thank you for that. And thank you to all of the participants for your questions. I really do appreciate it. Otherwise, I'd have to come up with questions, and I'm not quite as smart as you all are. So I just want to remind everyone that there's going to be a poll question popping up very soon for you to answer. And we will draw the name of someone. I went through the poll question, and I think it's pretty obvious. You will be contacted through email. And also a reminder that on September 22nd, we are having a job fair. And we have industries including healthcare, banking, financial, hospitality, post-secondary, and social service agencies attending. So if anyone needs support and are looking for jobs in those fields and others, please sign up through the talent pool for that. And the Alberta government does offer free resume writing and job search workshops, which might be very beneficial for you so that you can, be at your best when you're meeting with the employers. And so we are going to have that link somewhere for you also. And let me see. And our next webinar is September 29th. Looking forward to seeing everyone. A reminder, you will get notice, so you don't need to re-register. You'll automatically get a reminder for the event. And I just want to thank, Sheri from Money Mentors. It was really informative, and I feel like this is a topic that we never really learn about. We don't really learn. We learn a little bit in our, grade 10, whatever class, but we really don't learn enough to understand how money makes the world go round. And when you don't have money, how do you figure out, what your next steps are? I also want to remind you that the support resource list is available on the Talent Pool Job Fair resource page. It's got wonderful resources around the province that will be beneficial. And then last, I just want to thank the Alberta government for their sponsorship of this program. And thanks to Tribe, our technology provider, and the support who's making the magic happen. And unfortunately, it couldn't help us for some of our little, beeps that we had today. But we appreciate their support, and certainly Talent Pool team that pulled this all together. I've come away with new information, and I hope you all have also. So thank you, everyone, for attending today. I understand there's no rain today, so get out, get some fresh air, enjoy it. Rain comes tomorrow. Hopefully that means no smoke, and we will all stay healthy and happy. So take care, everyone. And the PowerPoint will show, if you need more information, grab your pen and paper, and you can jot down the information that will be on the PowerPoint. So thanks, Sheri. Have a good day.